In April of this year, I took a trip to Sedona, Arizona. What brought me to Sedona, Arizona? To tell you the truth, I don't really know, but I have an idea. I think it might have something to do with my hair. You see, I love getting my hair cut. I love getting my hair cut. But even more than getting my hair cut, I love barbershops. I love everything about barbershops. I love the smell of barbershops. I want to bottle that fragrance. You know that smell? The smell of hair tonic mixed with baby powder, mixed with sweaty old men? Old men who go into barbershops not necessarily because they need a haircut, but maybe just so they can shoot the shit to kill an hour or a day or a lifetime. I love that TV show, The Andy Griffith Show, mostly for the scenes that take place in Floyd's, because I love barbershops. Well, I moved to Davis, California when I was only 4 years old, and it was then that I started getting my haircut at the Davis barbershop by a man named Cav. And Cav was a fantastic barber. Cav was so good at cutting my hair that when I moved to San Francisco, and when I moved to Berkeley, and when I traveled up and down the east coast of this great nation, and when I traveled all around the world, I would always save my haircuts for when I could get back to Davis, California, and let Cav do the job. He was that good of a barber. And Cav had this wonderful trait about him. When he was done with your haircut, as he was pulling off your smock, he used to make this sound. He would go like this. He would go, "Okay." And I loved that sound. I loved the sound of Cav pulling off my smock and saying, "Okay." I loved that sound so much that when I was in college, I took a class on lighting and sound design for film, theater, and television. And one day, the sound design instructor, he gave us an assignment. He wanted to prove us a lesson. He wanted to teach us how sounds affect us. So he asked us to pull out a piece of paper, so we pulled out a piece of paper. And then he said, "I want you to write a line down the middle of the piece of paper." So we wrote a line down the middle of the piece of paper. And he said, "Now you have a left-hand column and you have a right-hand column. So on the left-hand side, I want you to write down 10 sounds that you find disturbing. And on the right-hand column, I want you to write down 10 sounds that you find soothing." So on the left-hand side, the disturbing side, of course, I wrote down a bunch of cliche things. Things like fingernails on the chalkboard, or the sound of screeching tires, the shot of a gun, the crash of a car. And on the other side, the soothing side, I wrote down equally cliche things. Things like, I don't know, the gentle breeze blowing through wind chimes, or the sound of running water in a small stream in the mountains, the sound of silence. And at the bottom of my list of soothing sounds, I wrote down the sound of my barber pulling off my smock and saying, "Okay." I like that sound because it reminds me of my childhood, and sometimes I miss my childhood. Well, one day when I was in college, I went back to Davis, California to get my hair cut by Cav. I was about fourth in line, so I had some time to kill. So I did what you do when you have some time to kill when you're in a barber shop. I thought I would read a magazine. Now, at the Davis barbershop, they have stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines. Most of them are old issues of Guns and Ammo or hunting and fishing, a couple of hobbies that I don't have too much of an interest in. But if you're lucky enough and if you look hard enough, you might find a Cosmo. Or a People, or a Rolling Stone, or an Entertainment Weekly. They keep the Playboys in a barber chair, in a drawer behind the barber chairs. You have to ask for those. And I think on this particular occasion, I was lucky enough to come across an old issue of Rolling Stone magazine. Now, in this issue of Rolling Stone magazine, there was an interview with Woody Allen. Now, look, I love Woody Allen. I don't care about his personal life because I love his art. I appreciate his art. I love his movies. Not so much the most recent movies, but the older ones, the classics. I mean, anybody who can pull off making a movie about a giant tit attacking a small town is okay in my book. So I was reading this interview with Woody Allen, and at one point the interviewer asked him a question. He said, "Is there anything in the world that you're jealous of?" And Woody Allen said, "Yes." He said the one thing in this world that he was jealous of was spiritual people who completely believe in their faith. He said he was jealous of Catholics who completely believe in Catholicism, or Jewish people who completely believe in Judaism, and even atheists who completely believe in nothing. He said he was tired of being an agnostic, and he wished that he could have blind faith in something, anything. And when I read his response to that question, I thought to myself, my God, not only do I look like Woody Allen, but I think like Woody Allen, because this has been my problem my entire life. I have no spirituality, none. I mean, I was born Catholic, yes. I was baptized Catholic, but I don't remember it. I've had communion, but the only thing that communion ever meant to me is that I could have a snack at the end of church and I could drink wine while I was underage. I went to catechism classes, and all the other kids used to threaten to beat me up after Sunday school. Pretty good Catholics, don't you think? And I went to confession once in my life, and I lied. Should go to confession now. My priest would have a field day. I'd probably have to do a million Hail Marys, and to tell you the truth, I don't even know what a Hail Mary is. And I've read the Bible almost completely from cover to cover. It's true. And in my youth, I took it as fact, but in my heart and my soul, I never truly believed it. And it wasn't until I was in high school and I was in a play called Inherit the Wind. You know that play Inherit the Wind about the Scopes monkey trial? It was then that I became exposed to the theories of Charles Darwin. Now the beautiful thing about Inherit the Wind is that it doesn't discredit Darwin and it doesn't discredit the Bible. It believes that the two can coexist. It believes that creationism and evolutionism can coexist. So because of Inherit the Wind, I became an agnostic and I stopped going to church altogether. Well, not altogether. I would still go to weddings and to funerals. But I stopped going to Mass. Except for every year, once a year, on Christmas Eve at midnight. Midnight Mass. Yes, I became what I have termed a pathetic Catholic. A pathetic Catholic is somebody who only goes to church once a year, every year, on Christmas Eve at midnight, midnight Mass, and for some reason we think that's good enough to get us into heaven. Now, because there are so many pathetic Catholics, you have to show up to midnight Mass a little bit early. So the first year I showed up about, 15 minutes early, and I got a pretty good seat toward the front row. The next year I showed up about 5 minutes early, and I had to sit in the very, very back row. The next year I showed up right on time. Couldn't even get a seat. I had to stand behind the back row. And the next year I showed up just a little bit late. You can't show up late to midnight Mass, because if you show up late to midnight Mass, you have to stand in the hallway leading up to the church. So I was standing in the hallway leading up to the church, and I was watching the services through this doorway. It was a doorway, so it's kind of square. And maybe it's because I was bored, and maybe it's because I love TV so much, but I decided that I was watching Mass on TV. So I was watching the services on TV, and I was listening to the congregation, respond, and the priests say what they're supposed to say. They were saying things like, "Peace be with you, and also with you. Lift up your hearts. We lift them up to the Lord. Let us give thanks. Thanks to the Lord our God. It is right to give thanks and praise." And something was bothering me, but I couldn't figure out what was bothering me. I couldn't put my finger on it until they got to the Lord's Prayer. You know the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father who art in heaven, thou be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation. And when I was listening to the congregation mindlessly recite that which they were told to recite, and when I was listening to them mindlessly professing their blind faith in God, I was reminded of something. Maybe it was because it was on my TV screen, but I was reminded of something. I was reminded of the Planet of the Apes. Now, not the first Planet of the Apes movie, the second Planet of the Apes movie. Because in the second Planet of the Apes movie, there's all the apes live above ground, but there's this colony of superhuman beings who live below ground. And every day, this colony of superhuman beings, they all go into a church-like room, and they all sit there and they mindlessly profess their blind faith, not in God, but in a nuclear bomb. And when I found myself comparing my religion, my church, my faith to the Planet of the Apes, I couldn't do it anymore. So the agnostic turned into an atheist, and I stopped going to midnight Mass, but instead I created for myself a new midnight Mass. Instead of going to church every year at midnight on Christmas Eve, me and my friend Anthony Costello decided that we would hook up at some greasy spoon somewhere and just talk about stuff. Every year at midnight on Christmas Eve, me and Anthony Costello would sit in a greasy spoon and talk about stuff. But it seems that all my religions are doomed to a slow failure. Because the first year as an atheist, we showed up at Cindy's restaurant here in Davis. We just sat there. We smoked cigarettes. We drank coffee. And we talked about life, love, death, and everything in between. But the next year, they enforced the smoking ban. So we couldn't smoke cigarettes out there. That was okay. We just drank coffee, and we talked about life, love, death, and everything in between. And the next year, they opened up a Lions in town. So Cindy started closing their doors at 10 p.m. That's okay. We went to Lions at midnight. We sat there, and we talked about life, love, death, and everything in between. And the next year, I gave up coffee. But that was okay. I sat there, I drank herbal tea, Anthony drank coffee, and we just talked about life, love, death, and everything in between. And you want to know something? Last year, Anthony didn't even show up. But that's okay. I went to Lions by myself, and I sat there with my herbal tea, and I thought about life, love, death, and everything in between. Well, I was pretty happy being an atheist until events of my recent past, which have left me with an overwhelming desire to find some spirituality. I keep thinking about that Woody Allen article. I keep thinking about what he said. And I keep thinking about the events of my recent past. And I keep thinking how much I wish I could find blind faith in something, anything. And for some reason, I thought maybe I could find it in Sedona, Arizona.